Run, river, run, run through the hills. Run, river, run to the sea. Run, river, run to your place beneath the sun. Run, river, run over me.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest. Today we have from Pawtucket, Rhode Island, we have Paul LeBon with us. And Paul has written a fantastic book about JFK in Texas. Fantastic book, a triumphant two-day journey until. It also contains the Warren Commission summary, and this book, the book that may begin to heal Dallas's and Texas' long assassination nightmare and hangover. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Jane. Glad to be here.
And Paul is also the managing editor of the Rhode Island Wave newspaper. Now that's online, right?
It's online and in hard print, yes.
Okay, I get that online, I think. This might be where I heard of you, But anyway, Paul has written quite a book. Now, your father was born in the same day and year as JFK.
Yes.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And you lived in Dallas for 32 years.
32 years, yes.
And did you see the parade he was in with Jackie?
Well, no, I'm too young for that.
Yeah.
I was in the third grade.
Okay.
But I saw the filming when, what's his name, who's a famous producer, they filmed JFK some years ago there. I forget who he was now, but I saw the whole filming. But every year on the 22nd of November, I saw the circus come to town. You know, all the freak shows and all their conspiracy books and theories and whatever. And I've been to the 6th floor museum numerous times. I've taken my parents when they'd visited, taken friends. But on the 50th anniversary, I read about an incident at the hotel in Fort Worth and him arriving in Fort Worth the night before. And I said, I didn't know he had been here for 24 hours, had visited 4 other cities. So I began all this research, and that's what led to this book. This really is the story that's never been told.
Yeah.
You know, most people think he got on a plane in Washington, flew to Dallas, drove downtown, and got shot. But no, he was in San Antonio, Houston, Fort Worth, Dallas, and in every city. The reception he received, which I talk about in the book, and show pictures, was tremendous.
There is a foreword here by New Hampshire State Senator Louis D'Alessandro. How did you get that? How did you go about getting that one?
Lou and I are actually friends. Before I moved to Texas, I was living in southern New Hampshire when I was still with American Airlines. And I was teaching part-time at Franklin Pierce College, and Lou was vice president of continuing education, so we became friends. We still are very good friends. We talk regularly.
That is fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about you, Paul, because in the back of the book is a gold mine as to who Paul is and what he's done. You were the idea man. You started when you found out that you had Alzheimer's early on. You stopped that job and you began to sponsor the first ever prescription drop-off day. What was that all about?
Well, twice a year, the DEA, and today, twice a year, DEA in April and October, they have something called Prescription Take-Back Day. Well, back in 2009, I was president of the Football Boosters Club in my son's high school, very active in the community, and we lost several young people to drug overdoses, and not, street drugs, but prescription drugs.
Yeah.
And so they formed a drug and alcohol task force. Well, it was the 4th time in my life. Nashua, New Hampshire, Acworth, Georgia, Woonsocket, Rhode Island, and now Louisville, Texas. I said, you know what, this time on this task force, I'm going to make a difference.
Yeah.
So there was a poster at the time that was popular, said, the biggest drug dealer in your neighborhood is in your medicine cabinet. Get rid of your drugs. So I started looking into this idea of just how to take back prescription drugs. Well, ironically, the city of Wilmington, Massachusetts was having a drug take-back day, so I flew up here to observe it. Well, it was an arduous process. People had to fill out show ID, fill out paperwork, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I said, man, this is going to be a bit easier way. So along with my people on my committee, we brainstormed about having this so-called drop-off day. Through my congressman, tried to reach out to the DEA. Well, he wasn't very helpful. So I won't tell the whole story, but I got the direct number for the woman who was the director of the DEA. I got her direct line. So I called her office, and I said to her secretary, I'd like to speak to the director. I have an idea. And she said, sir? I said, well, I left my name and number. I called 11 days in a row. She said, well, we'll get back. Someone will get back to you. I called 11 days in a row. My son said, Dad, they're going to arrest you for stalking. I said, no, just leave my name and message. So on the 12th day, I said to the secretary, I said, ma'am, I'll bet you're tired of me calling, aren't you? I said, I'm very tired of calling myself. I said, please ask her to give me 30 seconds. And she's okay. So I said, I'm with the Louisville Independent School District in Texas. We want to do a drug collection day, but we don't want all the paperwork and, baloney. I said, we just want people to pull in, drop their drugs, and drive off.
Yeah.
She says, it's a great idea.
Why not?
So
Yeah.
they got in touch with us. We did the first one in May of 2009. We did it again in May 1st. We did it again in October. The following April of 2010. That summer, the DEA went to Congress and got passed what's called, I forget the official name, is the Responsible Drug Collection Act. And since then, the DEA, now they do it twice a year. We started with 5 high schools in 2009. This past, when they just did it last month in April, they have almost 7,000 collection sites on that Saturday across the country. They used our exact model, Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. But the biggest change is there are now, we've put the first collection box for people to throw unused prescriptions in our police station in Texas. Now there are 85,000 collection boxes across the United States. Police stations, fire stations, CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, all the big chains.
Good.
And as of last year, they had, to put it in terms, they'd taken back over the 10 years, they've taken over 11 million tons of unused prescriptions. To put it in terms you can relate to, that would fill 28 747 aircraft. So,
Really, that was a darn good idea.
I'll tell you what.
No. Did you design the cover of JFK in Texas?
As a matter of fact, I did.
You did?
Yes. I'm proud of the cover.
Yeah.
It shows, actually the centerpiece, the picture of him, that was his last public speech outside of the hotel in Fort Worth before he addressed the Chamber of Commerce and before he came to Dallas. And these other photos are just all photos from the various cities. But my favorite is the one in the middle here.
Yeah, well,
you see all those little girls.
Girl going like that.
Well, I can relate because they look like they were about, I was in the 3rd grade at Catholic school back then. They look like about the 3rd graders. And all the girls are clapping, except one little girl, she's got her cheeks, her hands are like that. Yeah. And in fact, in the back of the book, I call out and I say, if you're out there somewhere, let me know who you are, what became of your life.
So tell people, basically, what made you want to write this, and what is it cover? What is it all about? We know about the death, but
it's about the 4 cities that he visited before he arrived in Dallas. Well, 3 cities and Dallas. He was in San Antonio. He dedicated what is now the Brooke Army Medical Center. Several years ago, Hillary Clinton and John McCain dedicated the Center for the Intrepid, for the Iraq War veterans, amputees. But he dedicated that initially, the medical center, in 1963. Then he went to Houston. And everywhere he went, I see the pictures, crowds 5 deep on the sidewalks. You've seen lots of presidential candidates come through New Hampshire, the primary. Today, the limousine, it moves 60, 70 miles an hour. His limousine went 11 miles an hour, open top. He pulled over, stopped. In Houston, one of the greatest stories, in Houston, they were there for a fundraiser for a congressman. He heard that LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens, was having their national convention across town at another hotel. He said to the driver, "Let's go drop him and Jackie, LBJ and Lady, but let's go drop in on that convention at that other convention." So they showed up. There's a picture of the bellman. Looks like, remember Jose Jimenez from the old TV show. There's a bellman greeting them. They came in. Now here's the stunner. He spoke to the crowd. Of course, he was an Irish boy from Boston. He only spoke English. He spoke to the crowd in English. Mrs. Kennedy, who we all knew had been raised in a French-speaking household, she got up after he spoke. She repeated his entire speech in Spanish. Stunned the crowd. The next day, that night, they flew from Houston to Fort Worth, arrived at midnight. There were 3,000 people at the airport waiting for him. The next morning, he was supposed to speak at 9 o'clock at the Chamber of Commerce breakfast. Well, by 7 o'clock, all the parking lots around the hotel were jammed with people. So that's why they set up the speaker, the microphone. And again, he showed his classic, just great sense of humor when he went inside. And when they were starting at 9 o'clock, they were supposed to start the breakfast, and Mrs. Kennedy hadn't come down yet. And he said, "You'll have to excuse my wife. He says it takes her a little bit more time than the rest of us to get ready. But of course, when she does, she looks better than the rest of us. He says, he said, I can't understand this trip. It reminded me of Paris. He said, I don't understand why anyone isn't concerned with what Lyndon and I are wearing. So he just showed
What didn't
great,
he say it
great
when he
humor.
was in Paris? Didn't he say, I'm the man that escorted Jackie Kennedy?
Right, because she was so popular. Exactly.
She was.
Yes.
You know, she and Princess Diana, right up there.
Yes, yes. And as a matter of fact, on the back cover of the book,
Yeah.
I really pay tribute to her. And as I say, our First Lady, Jacqueline Kennedy, she was graceful, elegant, refined, and ebullient. All natural beauty. Her ever-present smile put a smile in our hearts. When she lost her husband, we lost her smile.
Yeah, definitely. She was smart.
Mm-hmm.
She was graceful.
Mm-hmm.
She'd been through a lot.
Absolutely.
They even lost a child.
Yes.
Yep, they had a miscarriage. And her daughter is alive now. Had she passed before little John died?
No, JFK Jr. She passed before him.
You know what? Thank God she didn't have to know that.
No, really. No, actually, there's a picture of him kind of kissing her grave or her casket at her funeral, and then he passed away afterwards in the plane crash.
Unbelievable. So now they were doing a couple other things. JFK was before he was in the parade in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And so that morning she was a little late showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Then what happened?
Then he spoke and gave a speech in Fort Worth, made a joke about Fort Worth and Texas being the second largest state in the country for military contractors.
Yeah.
He said, and if you're wondering, number one isn't Massachusetts. He said, it's California.
Yeah.
It just showed more humor. Of course, then they traveled to Dallas. Now, the interesting thing is, and I put it in terms that you can understand here in the book, Fort Worth to Dallas is 30 miles. That's like going basically from here to Framingham. Well, why fly from one to the other?
Yeah.
He could have just taken the interstate. But Dallas wanted their big motorcade, their big parade through town.
Yeah.
So that's why they ended up adding Dallas as the extra city. When they left Love Field, they drove right by the back of the trademark. We were going to give a speech, but they wanted the motorcade to wind through town. And it was great because people were 5 deep everywhere.
Yeah.
He stopped his car and shook hands with people.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it just, one of those things. And I know that I really basically just touched that much on the actual assassination in my book. It's more about, it's a very positive book. And there's all these conspiracy theories and whatever, and people ask me my opinion. You know what?
Yeah.
Hey, things happen.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of years ago, I got caught in a tornado in Dallas, coming home from Love Field. And all the decisions I made along the way with my Uber driver, not to go on the tollway, to stop at a sandwich shop to go pick up a sandwich, to take Harry Hines Boulevard instead of the interstate because it was late night, and poof, they were at an intersection, and a tornado started 90 yards away from us and picked us up and flipped us over. If we'd have just gotten on the tollway, I'd have been home in bed while I'd have watched the tornado on the news. So, little things that happen all come into play.
Yeah.
My feeling is, if there had been more people involved besides Oswald, they'd have come out by now. They'd have come out into the public. They'd have made money on the story.
What about Jack Ruby? He's a mystery to me too.
Well, Jack Ruby owned a nightclub, a strip club, and he was, of course, he was the one who shot JFK.
Yeah.
I mean, shot Oswald.
Yeah.
But again, an
Oswald,
interesting turn of events, and I showed in my book here, is that if you remember when Oswald was shot, he was being walked in handcuffs by a detective with a Stetson. Jim Lovell.
Yes, I just looking at his picture. He's still around.
No, he's passed away. But Jim Lovell was a survivor of Pearl Harbor. So imagine surviving Pearl Harbor, and then you're holding the president's assassination, who gets shot. Two major events in history, and there you are.
At the age of 99, he passed away.
Yeah.
I'll bet he could have told a lot.
I'll bet I can't even count how many times I went to him. If I read in the Dallas Morning News he was speaking somewhere, I went. I loved listening to his stories because he blended both. He talked about Pearl Harbor and he talked about the JFK assassination.
It's been a mystery to so many people. I was just a kid in school, but I remember coming. They dismissed us early that day.
Right, same here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember coming home, and my parents were pretty much glued to the television. By that time, I was old enough to realize something horrible had happened, and was it Walter Cronkite ends up in a crime. By thinking about that just gives you the chills now, because that
Sure.
hasn't left me. I remember that. You too?
Yeah, and I remember third grade, St. Anne's School in Saukett, Rhode Island, the nuns coming out, and the Mother Superior making the announcements, sending us home.
Yeah.
And I'm perhaps you as well. I mean, back then, in the kitchen they had a plate. My parents had a plate of the Kennedys on the wall,
Sure.
next to the one of the Pope. That's the way it was back then. Every household, and the Italian families also had Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
But the plate, the JFK plate. I mean, he was beloved. And here, she was from Rhode Island, Newport, and so everyone talks about, you always hear about Hyannisport, but they spent as much time in Newport with her family as they did in Hyannis. In fact, Jackie preferred Hammersmith Farm in Newport because it was quiet.
Yeah.
Hyannisport was bustling and rustling.
Sure.
So my dad can remember seeing the president, sailing in Narragansett Bay with the Coast Guard boats tracking him.
I know my family had a family cottage in Dennisport, and I remember growing up hearing about, it was so close by, the Hyannisport.
Sure.
I remember my parents used to talk about it and everything. He seems to be the one president in all of our history that people from all parties cared about, really, really liked.
Sure.
Maybe not all his policies, but they liked the man. They had respect for him. And he seemed to respect others as well.
Exactly. I mean, there's a little crazy element in Texas, and that's what the famous full-page newspaper ad and posters accusing him of treason. But it was the John Birch Society, which was a real right-wing organization, back then. But other than that, again, when you see 5 people deep on a sidewalk in San Antonio, people hanging off of rooftops and off of balconies. I mean, everybody just wanted to get close to him.
Right on his cover, here's John F. Kennedy standing there. Tons of hands reaching out to
Exactly.
You couldn't do that nowadays.
No, not at all.
But would you think that was the end of our politicians getting that close to people?
That definitely was the end. Because then after that, LBJ, they always had the bubble, the top, and not today. I mean, good grief.
The Pope has one too.
Yeah, exactly.
He has to have a boat. It's sad, but it has to be. Where are you going to be speaking next?
I'm booked with several Rotary clubs. Of course, I live in Rhode Island, so I'm booked with several Rotary clubs. I reached out. I'll tell you what. Maybe this will make a difference. I reached out to the Democratic State Committee of Massachusetts. They have their convention next weekend in Worcester, and I sent them a copy of the book.
Sure.
Said, could I please come and sell my books at your convention? Never heard back. I made several phone calls.
Who's the head of the convention?
I don't know. I mean, it's all on their website. But I reached out to, I figured, God, it's a natural, Massachusetts. Hello.
But don't give up, because sometimes. Did you send an email or did you call?
I actually sent a copy of the book with a letter. Then I followed up with a couple of emails and telephone calls. And so, as a last kind of desperation, I reached out to the city of Worcester, see if I could just set up a table on the sidewalk. Well, you can't. What they call hawkers and peddlers. You can't sell within so many feet of the what's now called the DCU Center.
Right.
So. But
don't give up. I would follow up. I mean, that's one of the things I do to help people and key into who they need to be with. How can they get a copy of your book?
Okay, they can send. Of course, they can basically, like everyone else, they can go on Amazon and purchase it for $19.95, or they can purchase the Kindle version. But if they would like a signed personalized copy, they can send to me in Paul LeBon, P.O. Box 3206, Pawtucket, Rhode Island, 02861. Send me a check for $25. I will return you a signed copy. And what I found is many people from my generation. Oh no, I'm sorry. People like from my children's generation, they want to buy one for their parents and one for their in-laws. So the deal is $20 for one copy, $30 for two. If you want to give one for your parents and one for your in-laws, you can purchase so $25 and then.
You're missing a huge. It looks like you're missing a huge group of people. Senior centers. You'd be a shoo-in. They may be old enough to be my parents, whatever, but they have kids who are in our, the group that was children growing up.
Right.
They have kids, they have grandkids. People very often, my authors will say, "Why are you suggesting that. I said, well, I had one guest here one time. She was all new, and she wrote a fantastic book about her upbringing. And I said, okay, well, here's where you're going. I gave her the long list. And she said, why are you sending me there? I said, well, because I said, seniors love to read. They have children and grandchildren. She sold 10 books in an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, people don't think like that. I mean, it's not, it's really, this is, how many people do you think you would reach at senior centers throughout New England?
That's a good. That's a really good
that's
point.
just one of my
That's
suggestions.
a really good point. My first book back in 1999. I was a business consultant. I wrote the first book ever on how to use voicemail as an effective communication tool because I was a sales trainer. I sold a huge number. I never sold one through. I sold them all to my corporate clients. GE, Abbott Laboratories, whatever, but 3,000, 5,000. They bought one for every employee. So it kind of spoiled me. Hey, just write a check, send a check. And being self-published, it hardly cost me. The book hardly cost me anything, so it was good profit. Since then, the books I've written seven books now. Most of them are political. They deal primarily with Cuba, which is one of my passions, and those have been sold kind of in a political environment.
We've been talking with Paul LeBon. He is the author of JFK in Texas, A Triumphant 2-Day Journey Until, and also, Paul is the managing editor of the Rhode Island Wave, which is a newspaper that's in print as well as online. And I had she is the owner, the editor. She was
Dina,
on,
she's the owner and publisher.
Yeah, Dina
Grenier.
She was on, and you were watching the show while she was on. So it's an interesting. When you discovered you had Alzheimer's, there's a section in the book that says Alzheimer's journey leads to Cuba. How did that happen?
So, when I lost my marriage and my mind, basically, in a 61-day period, you can imagine how depressed I was. And I was good friends with the Archbishop down in Houston, Daniel Donato. So I went to visit him for a weekend. I said, Daniel, the only thing I haven't done about suicide is to do it. I said, that's all I can think. I lost my job, my career, my house, my family, my wife. He said, oh, shut up and stop feeling sorry for yourself. He said, I got something for you to do. He says, I want you to go to Cuba, go help my brother Cardinal Ortega rebuild the Catholic Church, get people to start coming back to church. Castro lifted the restrictions, they can come in, blah, blah. So I thought about it. So I went down there for 30 days and met Cardinal Ortega, he'd been jailed in the 60s by Castro for secretly saying masses. He's trying to get people to come back to church. Well, so if you're familiar with the movie Sister Act with Whoopi Goldberg, that was my model. I said, I tell you what, Your Eminence, I read there's two things that people like in Cuba. They're passionate about music and art. I said, your churches are beautiful. They've been boarded up for 25 years. They're beautiful artwork and statues. I said, so how about if I'll pay for it out of my own pocket. You have 20 churches in Havana proper. Let's hire 20 bands next Sunday to play for 1 hour, 9 to 10 o'clock in the churches, and see if people come in, and if they do, then maybe they'll stick around for Mass. He said, that's kind of an interesting, but he says, my brother Cardinal tells me you're a smart man, you've helped a lot of businesses. He said, it's my money. So that's what we did. We hired 20 bands, so next Sunday he and his driver come pick me up. We go to one church. There's 6 people in one Mass. Because the priest would show up, and people wouldn't, no one showed up, the priest would leave. Well, there's 6 people in one church, 10 people, 18 people. One church had 26 people. Every church had people in it that come for the music and stay for the Mass. He said, my God, he said, you're a brilliant man. I said, no. I told him about the movie Sister Act. So I came home, thick old pink, I came home. A month later, they asked me to come in help organize the visit by Pope Benedict in 2012. He said, Pablo, you have the biggest cojones of any man I've ever met. I want you to be the liaison to the government, to the Castros. He said, they won't give you any grief because you're American. It's okay. So I worked with them, or I got to meet the Foreign Ministry of MINREX, as they call people. Well, when there's a festival, they put those 4 6-foot banners on the street poles around the city. That's what they were going to do. Bienvenido, welcome, Pope. Well, I was living in Dallas. The year before, the Dallas Mavericks had been in the NBA championships. And Mark Cuban, the owner, had made these huge banners, hung them on the sides of office buildings and hotels. I showed them those pictures. They loved the idea. Well, I put them in touch with a company in Canada. They made a banner They had a banner made 256 feet long, 16 stories high, of the Virgin Mary. The Pope was coming for the 500th anniversary of the patroness of Cuba. They also made a 16-story tall Cuban flag hung from military barracks. We're at the airport in Santiago waiting for the Pope to arrive. My lady comes over, she introduces me, takes me over and introduces me to Raul Castro. He has tears in his eyes. He's crying. He's thanking me for bringing the grandest flag ever to Cuba. He calls the little guy over. He gives me his business card. He said, I know you come here with Cardinal Ortega. If you need anything ever, call my office. 2 days later, we're in Havana. Now, Fidel's retired. He's living, so he's not the big cheese anymore, so the Pope doesn't go to him. He comes to the Pope. Yeah. So we're at the Apostolic Nuncio, the Vatican Embassy, hanging out with Pope Benedict and whatever. Fidel comes to visit the Pope. So they're talking, and when they finish talking, the lady goes over, she whispers to Fidel, points at me, hobbles over, leans on my shoulders, kisses me on both. He says, Bandera, bandera, musa, musa, musa. Flag, flag, beautiful, beautiful. Tu es hermano de Cuba. You are a brother of Cuba. Kiss me on both cheeks. I said, my God, the Castro brothers have a man crush. Well, I learned that there was a clinic in Cuba, there still is. In Spanish, it's an acronym, but in English, it stands for the International Center for Neurological Restoration. They deal with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. My friends all said, Paul, Pablo, you need to come, you need to come. I applied, they rejected me. They said, we don't take American patients. Well, guess whose business card I had? So I reached out, well, I was admitted. I was there for 5 weeks treatment. And I won't get into the whole litany of what they do, but if you know nothing about Alzheimer's, know this. In our body, we have what are called fluency scores. How fluent are you in, thinking, rationalizing, whatever. It's like school, 0 to 100. 100 is perfect. Through the years, you go down. When I arrived there, my fluency scores were in the 30s. I'd gotten lost on the highway and had my license plate flashed around Texas one time previously. After 5 weeks treatment, I left there from the 30s. My fluency scores were raised to the 60s, which is where they should have been for a person my age.
We have got about 3 minutes left. We talk forever.
I go back every 2 years for treatment, for a boost up.
Your copy of JFK in Texas will be downstairs. There'll be a lot downstairs in the local authors section of the Upton Library. One more time, how can they get your book?
For $25 for one signed copy, or $35 for two signed copies, to Paul LeBon, P.O. Box 3206, Pawtucket, Rhode Island, 02861, or you can get it via Amazon. Of course, it won't be personalized.
Very good. So, is there another book coming up?
As a matter of fact, there is.
Okay, when will that be done?
It's almost done.
Okay. And you're moving. What you said, you're in the process of your house.
I actually have 2 books that I'm updating. So I've got 2 books that are going to be coming out. And
so where are you going to move from Pawtucket to where?
I haven't decided yet. In
this day and age, you could sell your house for a lot, but you better find a place you can afford to go to after that.
Oh, sure. But when I moved back to Rhode Island, last summer, I wasn't sure where I wanted to live, and I settled quickly in Pawtucket because I was living in a hotel that was costing a lot of money. Well, I don't like where I'm living. In fact, it's a rough area, so I'm selling the place and I'm looking, and
Well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
That would be good.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time I'll be my guest.
On a shooting star, heading out toward a dream. Tomorrow's even closer than it seems.